Welcome to Free MMO Station. My name's Skylent, and today we're going to do a first impression, a first look at a new vehicular combat game called Dreadnought.
FreeMMOstation.com.
Alright guys, jumping into the game, let's talk about the namesake. So a Dreadnought. The Dreadnought was the most predominant type of battleship in the 20th century. Now essentially take battleships and put it in space, okay? Now, we have the game Dreadnought, and I definitely agree with the name being Dreadnought and the poster boy being the biggest classification of ship on this game. So not every ship is a Dreadnought in this game, right? There's different classifications. You have Destroyer, Corvette, Artillery Cruiser, Tactical Cruiser, and of course the Dreadnought. But I agree with the namesake being Dreadnought because that lets people know what kind of gameplay they're getting into. It's like World of Tanks, kind of mixed with something, I don't know, like Star Conflict. But in the end, I would say that the competitor game, which is Fractured Space, which is another, game that looks just like this, that's coming out pretty soon here, that game is really more like World of Tanks in space. This one, Dreadnought, kind of has a little bit more maneuverability and a little bit more emphasis on map design. Like, the map definitely has obstructions, it definitely has obstacles, you can duck under things, go over things, go around things. Like, the maps feel really awesome. I actually very much enjoy the maps. I'd say they're the best maps I've ever played in this genre. But it's not as fast-paced as something like War Thunder or Star Conflict specifically, because that's another sci-fi game. So it's really sitting, I would say, in between Star Conflict and Fractured Space in terms of speed, slowness, tacticalness, and just basically it's those two games, right? It's those two games mixed together. And what I mean by that is that the Corvette is very fast, and it almost feels like you're dogfighting when you're playing as the Corvette. But if you play as the Dreadnought, it's the slowest of slow pace that you can get. Potentially, you can do some big moves with a Dreadnought because you can actually warp into different areas. But for the most part, the maps are kind of small, but they have a huge amount of detail. They are so deep. You can do so much. There's so many sort of tactical maneuvers that you can make with your team or even just as yourself. As the Corvette, especially my favorite class of ship in this game, you can do so many sneaky maneuvers, jumping in, jumping out, stealthing, going around, going under places. It's really fantastic. And I very much enjoy this sort of flexibility with gameplay. And with that flexibility, I do want to mention that at any moment, you can change your class of ship. In some of these other vehicular combat games, you can't do that. You're set, you start with a vehicle, and you start with a random team of randoms against another random team of randoms, and really, it's kind of hard to be competitive in that sense because you don't know if your ship is countered or counters somebody else on the other team, or if your team even has like a synced composition. In this game, you can customize your vehicles, you can choose and pick your vehicles, and then in the match, whenever you die, you can actually switch your classes of vehicles and switch loadouts and stuff like that. So I feel like it's probably going to be the most competitive, truly, version of this genre, especially considering the whole space aesthetic. So we have Star Conflict and we have Fractured Space, and then we have Dreadnought sitting right in the middle. And in my personal opinion, okay, I have played all these other games, especially in the branching genres like War Thunder, World of Tanks. I feel like Dreadnought has the most impact. Visually, it's stunning. I like its UI. I like its sort of introduction to the game. It's almost kind of cinematic with its tutorial. Actually, I wouldn't doubt if they might expand it with a campaign. I think Star Conflict also has a campaign, but Dreadnought, I think, could do a really fantastic job with world building and everything. Like, the graphics look good. The sound design is fantastic, incredibly impactful. Like, if somebody warp drives right beside you, you hear that sound, like that crazy booming epic sound. It's amazing. I love it, and I feel like with this game, it's really hard for me to be critical. Like, I want to just full review it, right? I want to be all serious about it, but I can't because I'm kind of geeking out like a little kid. And I did not do that for Star Conflict or Fractured Space. Now, I thought Fractured Space was really cool, and at the time, I was kind of falling in love with the whole World of Tanks style of gameplay, the slower-paced tactical shooting games, but oh man, Dreadnought is just right there on the nail, hitting it real hard. Holy crap, I love it. Okay, so I guess we should probably, analyze the game and talk about some of its actual rich details instead of just me saying it's awesome, right? Okay, so let's talk about the different classes, okay? So the namesake, Dreadnought, but there's other classes of ships and what they entail, okay? So the Dreadnought, firstly, is the biggest ship. It's the biggest, slowest ship. It has a couple of potentials for loadouts and everything, and we will talk about the loadouts later. But the loadouts for this game are amazing. So the Dreadnought, basically its loadouts focus on just big damage. It's got really good range, It's got big damage, but the problem with all this damage and all this range, and just like all of this explosivity, the problem is that it's super slow, okay? And it's a pretty big target. And why is being a big target a bad thing in this game? Because unlike other games in the genre, you actually aim in this game. Now, it's not as sort of like, I guess it's not as detailed as Robocraft, because in Robocraft you can actually aim at certain parts and blow those parts up. Dreadnought's not like that, and I think World of Tanks is kind of similar in a sense. They have the whole RNG sort of mechanics with when things get destroyed or when things get pierced. You don't have that. But it is still a bigger target, and the game is an aimed game. Like, you still have to aim your projectiles, you have to lead sometimes. The projectiles actually move through space, you know, it's not all hit scan. I think only lasers are hit scan, and those are only for close range, basically. So yeah, being a big target, it's pretty easy to get hit, and to counter it, you are essentially going to be artillery down, or you're going to be probably, I guess, like, I don't know what to call it, like assassinated kind of with it by a Corvette, potentially, but overall it's really hard to just assassinate the Dreadnought, and it's really hard to beat it down and artillery it down because of the support vehicles that are around it, and because it's kind of tanky in itself. So let's talk about the artillery cruiser. This is going to be the sniper. It basically looks like a big sniper rifle. So the artillery cruiser is really, really vulnerable, okay? It's even more vulnerable than the Dreadnought because it's really long, it's really slow, okay? And it doesn't have the firepower to just burst somebody down if they come too close. You see what I'm saying? So even though it's got a really strong cannon, okay, so you do have to aim and snipe people, and it actually is very much a challenge, especially if you're trying to snipe Corvettes, which are going to be your counter. Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's a very static gameplay that, like, you don't really move around the map. You can cloak in place, for instance. You can have a siege mode where you just kind of bombard somebody if they are in range. And let me just say something, even though this game is slower paced, like for instance the artillery cruiser is kind of slow, you can still peek around different obstacles, you can still duck down, go up, you move around. There's definitely 3 dimensions to move around and to evade, and you can do evasive maneuvers, even if you are super slow and super sort of vulnerable like the artillery cruiser. What you're going to need to do, you're going to need to peek around areas in order to actually get snipes off on the Dreadnought. Now, what's stopping you from just straight up sniping the Dreadnought, even if you have vision, is going to be the tactical cruiser. Tactical cruisers are basically going to be the glue of the team. Tactical cruisers are the healers. That's what they do. They have a beam that they just kind of like shoot out at people's, and it heals them magically. I'm sure there's some sort of like lore canon to explain that. But yeah, tactical cruisers are basically the medic from TF2 set in Dreadnought, and that's what they do. They heal up the Dreadnought. Basically, I mean they can heal everything, but you're really gonna see tactical cruisers glued onto the Dreadnought because the Dreadnought does pretty much the most damage overall, and it's also pretty vulnerable. But it has a lot of health, so it's really easy to keep the Dreadnought alive. So you're going to see tactical cruisers just constantly feeding the Dreadnought. Artillery cruisers are going to try to kill the Dreadnought, but you got to kill that tactical cruiser or just somehow burst down the Dreadnought. Otherwise, it's going to be super hard. You won't be able to just peck it down with attacks. And let's talk about what can kill artillery cruisers. So let's say that your team has destroyed a tactical cruiser. How do you save your Dreadnought? Well, by being offensive, okay? So if you want to stop that artillery cruiser from pecking down your Dreadnought, you're going to have your teammate, your Corvette, go and assassinate the artillery cruiser. Now, it's really hard to assassinate Dreadnoughts because of their firepower. It's hard to assassinate tactical cruisers because they're always around teammates, and they're not like the lightest, you know, they have shields and stuff like that. They're pretty tanky themselves. So Corvettes, really, they counter artillery cruisers, because artillery cruisers don't have that much maneuverability, and generally they're sniping, so they're kind of tunnel vision. So Corvettes can kind of sneakity snake around, and they're really fast. You have potential for blink drives, you can go invisible, stealth, or you can just be really freaking fast and maneuverable. So Corvettes are actually pretty good at medium to close range. Like, you can actually kind of snipe people down, sort of, because the shots are aimed. Now, I will say that some guns don't go all the way across the map. So the Corvette, you won't be able to snipe all the way at the ring of the map and moving around, but you have to get a little bit close. But if you go with blink drive, for instance, and afterburner, you're just so fast that nobody's gonna really be able to touch you, and you kind of almost play like a tracer gameplay from, like, you know, Overwatch. Or you can go stealth and go kind of roguish and then sit right, like literally there have been times where I'm literally on top of an artillery cruiser. I shoot my torpedoes, I use my Gatling guns, and I set my energy to go to damage, and then I just go crazy. I go crazy. Oh yeah, and the energy system, we do gotta talk about that. But let's talk about what really messes up Corvettes. What is the counter to Corvettes? And that's gonna be destroyers. Destroyers Generally, this is my experience personally. As a Corvette, I attempt to sort of break through the front lines. You know, I either blink in, or I try to snake around, and either way, I'm just trying to move somewhere. And destroyers, being the vanguards, and just being such damaging vehicles, they're gonna spot you pretty much, and they're gonna just do so much damage. So it's crazy, man. It's ridiculous. So Corvettes, being already light, you're trying to move through the map, and then the destroyer is gonna check you out. He's gonna see you. He's like, what are you doing? Get out of here. You're exploded. That's it. GG. So you gotta be really sneaky. You gotta watch out for the destroyers. You gotta see where the destroyer is on the map, and kind of, you know, definitely not go in his general direction. Yeah, pretty much. So you don't just try to tunnel vision and focus on who you're gonna kill. You gotta worry about who can kill you. And you kind of have this sort of like rock, paper, scissors gameplay with a couple of these vehicles. Like I said, Corvette beats artillery cruiser. Artillery cruiser can peck down dreadnoughts and destroyers. Tactical cruisers want to work with dreadnoughts, and dreadnoughts just can potentially wreck everything if they're in range and if they aren't getting damaged themselves. So I do like this mix of vehicles, especially depending on different loadouts. You can focus on doing different things. Like for instance, the Corvette is really good at killing artillery cruisers defaultly, but maybe you want to change around your loadout so that you can kind of be a little bit faster, so that you can have a longer range and just kind of poke down people, right? So then that way you can poke down the tactical cruiser, get his energy low, make him vulnerable so you can kill him, and then your team can move in and kill the Dreadnought. There's a couple of different loadouts, and I really do enjoy the loadout system for this game. It is, I think, superior to most other vehicular combat games. It's not just stat upgrades, and you do have some like upgrades that upgrade like your little stats, kind of, you know, like you do 10% more damage or something like that. But that's just like 1/4 of the customization, not counting, you know, the actual like cosmetic customization, which there's actually a decent amount in this game already, even though like none of it is really in the game yet, and I can't really purchase it. You have different skins, different colors, you have actual different modules you can add to your vehicle to make it look just straight up cooler. I really enjoy it, but the customization when it comes to the mechanical game is pretty intense. Like I said with the Corvette, you can change from blink or you can have stealth, and then there's different kinds of stealth, there's different kinds of maneuvers you can have. There's different ways to take care of like incoming missiles. For instance, I know with the Corvette, you can have a pulse, which destroys all missiles in a range, which I think is really fun. So a lot of the times you'll see like these dreadnoughts or destroyers, they'll just do all these missiles coming your way just because they're annoyed at you pecking at them. And what you can do is you can actually blink into the missiles and then pulse and destroy all the missiles. Or maybe even potentially do this defensively to save some of your teammates. I don't know, that sounds pretty interesting. Or you can have a laser guy, like you can have lasers that shoot down missiles as they come, though I think that's a little bit riskier to me. I think Corvette, it's a lot funner to have the pulse. Anyways, so you can choose different defensive modules, different offensive modules. You can take out maybe some mobility, so instead of having blink, maybe you just want to go just damage. So you can actually replace your blink and stealth with a damage module, and that goes for all of these different class ships. They have all their unique modules, they have all their unique weapons that you can switch on and on. Like the Corvette has dual repeaters, and it comes with a medium cloak defaultly. You can change from lasers to machine guns. There's a lot of cool stuff, but basically what every vehicle is going to have a primary default weapon, which you press Q to do the secondary weapon. So generally you're going to have a long-range weapon and a short-range weapon, although you can mix and match this, you know, in the loadouts. So you have a primary, secondary, and then you have 4 abilities. I want to call these abilities, okay? So generally you're going to have long-range missiles, you're going to have defensive short-range missiles, you're going to have sort of missile defense, and then you're going to have probably some mobility ability, though, like I said, with the loadouts, you can change these. But basically, you have 2 weapons, primary and secondary weapons, and then you have 4 abilities. And then, of course, you have the default stats and, you know, the look and shape of your vehicle. But between these guys, I really do like the customization. Now, I am a little bit sad that there isn't a carrier-type vehicle, because I feel like that would be really fun for me. Generally, I like playing, like, RTS-y type of characters in non-RTS games. Go figure. Like Nature's Prophet in Dota 2, for example, Broodmother, Dota 2, basically anybody in Dota 2, or the Specialist class in Heroes of the Storm. So Dreadnought, you know, being like inspired from battleships, I was kind of hoping that I would be able to get a carrier class ship. I don't know if that's coming or if it's never going to come. In my opinion, I think it would be cool, but if you look at the maps and if you actually look at the gameplay, there's a lot of like smaller ships running around, and it's just kind of cinematic. It doesn't actually impact gameplay at all. So there's like smaller ships fighting these other fleets of ships, and there's like all this epicosity going on. in the background. And I just want to say the polish of this game and the overall presentation is epic. But going back to the mechanical gameplay, because it does have all these smaller ships that are just cosmetic and aesthetic flying around, I don't think there is really room for having carriers. But I mean, it seems like they might potentially have the actual systems in place to be able to do that. I don't think they will though, because it's too hard to see smaller vehicles. It's too hard to actually hit them because remember, it's a true aimed game. And overall, I think it might be too confusing. I think they could do it. They could do a really cool carrier class ship, potentially, but right now, I don't think they will, based on what I've seen so far with the design. Okay, so going into the cosmetics of the game, they look good. You can change your emblems, which are just like these, they're like little decals kind of, but they're 3D mounted on the front. You can change the modules, which physically change your ship. Now, you do have a couple of different corvettes, a couple of different destroyers. You have a couple of different types of vehicles within the different classes. And overall, they look really good. You know, really good cosmetics, really good changes. However, I think that it's really tasteful design. I want to say that. I want to bring up the sort of like comparison to Hawken, where Hawken had a really unique design, but it was kind of ugly, let's admit it. It had okay customization, but it was ugly. Now, compared to Star Conflict and Fractured Space, I think Dreadnought has the aesthetic that matches me personally. I really like it. It's everything is kind of really bold and bright. Maybe to the extent of saying cartoony. Honestly, it kind of looks like Titanfall aesthetically. Wise, you know what I'm saying? So cosmetically, the game, I really enjoy it. I mean, that's complete bias, but I just want to say, I think the polish-wise, the gameplay, the graphics, they're good and everything, but it's also like the art direction of the game. It's colorful, okay, where Fractured Space is really not. It's very bleak and dark. Or like everything in Dreadnought is kind of brighter, more colorful. It's just more impactful. And then add in all the graphics and all the cool customizations and then the explosions and the sound design. Just add in everything, and Dreadnought seems to have it going for it. And I definitely, I just appreciate it. I just appreciate it. I know it's kind of hard to be a professional critique talking like that, but it's how it makes me feel. It makes me feel like a little kid, and I genuinely enjoyed Dreadnought, where a lot of the times I kind of dread going into these kind of games because they're slower paced, they're harder to learn, but in this game, right out of the gate, it feels so much more intuitive, more impactful, and it seems like there's more actual like creativity in terms of what you can do tactically, mechanically as well. Like actually controlling your ships is a challenge. It takes skill. It's awesome, but like what you can do with team compositions, what you can do with your loadouts, there's just so much more already. The game's not even close to being out, I think, really, and it's not even close to being at the level of World of Tanks. You know how many tanks are in World of Tanks, but how many tanks in World of Tanks are just statistical different, you know? Like, they look a little bit different, they play slightly different, they don't have entirely unique sets between their classes generally. So, this game, even between the Corvettes, you can play totally different in individual classes, and also you can look totally different cosmetically. So I like that. If you like games that allow you to sort of express yourself as a player, especially competitive games, like strategic games like this, or MOBAs, where you can really kind of show off your own flavor and play the way you want to play, with the constraints of characters and or vehicles, this is the game. This is the game. Yes, you are constrained by the sort of pace of the game. It is going to be slower paced than like a dogfighting game like War Thunder, but there is so much more to the game, so much more potential, and sometimes it gets really hectic. It can get really fast. Like I said, with the Corvette, or even with the Dreadnought, you can blink in, you go across the whole map, and then just explode and maybe get like a quadra kill or something like that. You can make plays in this game, or in other games, it is just too slow, or in other games, it is just too fast. I think this is going to fit the most amount of people, cosmetically, aesthetically. It's going to match the most amount of people. It's going to bring in the most amount of people, and I'm not saying the game is casualized at all. Like, it seems like a really hardcore game. It's still in the niche of, you know, like World of Tanks, like strategic or tactical shooters, but it just has, like, elements from a lot of different genres, and it brings to life the genre of tactical shooters. Like, true aim, it's got a lot of customization, it feels really impactful. All in all, even if you're not going to play the game competitively, it just seems like an overall just fun, you know, intuitive, easy to jump into, jump out game. I very much just freaking enjoy it. That's all I want to say, man. I like the game. I like it. So what do you guys think? What did you think of the gameplay? Let me know. And if you like my beautiful voice, you can go to my personal channel at Skylent Games, or you can check out my stream, which actually, I just streamed this game, and I will be streaming it tomorrow. Please go check it out, and hopefully I'll see you there. Or you can like and subscribe here. Always here having fun, and hopefully, guys, I'll see you in the next one.